I was the middle of 7 children. I was born in Oakland, which is outside of San Francisco. We're lower middle class. My father was an authoritarian career naval officer, strong Republican. And we moved from coast to coast to coast to coast because the Navy is always on the coastline. And so I loved film. I loved Laurel and Hardy and television sitcoms like the Honeymooners and so forth. And I always was sort of the one doing puppet shows and magic. Terrible, terrible magic, And of course you have brothers and sisters that heckle you and, he's got a rubber band up his sleeve. That's how he does it. But I knew early on I liked performing. I liked to make people laugh. And I started doing shows in school. Here's a pivotal moment for me. I was watching the Walt Disney program, and they showed how they made animated cartoons. And I saw Clarence Nash doing the voice of Donald Duck. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are grown-ups whose job it is to go to work and make Donald Duck cartoons. My brother was getting married in Los Angeles. Dr. Hamill, the success of the family. Because science trumps the arts, we all know that. But anyway, he was getting married, and one of his friends, his best man, in fact, was Michael Franks, who's a composer, writer, and he had written this original show, which I wound up auditioning for and getting in, this would have been the summer of 1969 when I graduated. And so it kept me in Los Angeles because the show ran throughout the summer, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have the grades to get into, I couldn't get a scholarship or whatever. But it was the era of Vietnam, so you had to get into school or you get drafted, and I knew I'd make a terrible soldier. What happened was I was a native Californian, so I went to Los Angeles City College, which by law, they must accept you if you're a native of California. All that happened was my agent started getting upset with me because I'd go out on these auditions, and a couple times I booked the job, but I couldn't do it and still keep up with my classes, see. So I got work that first summer afterwards in 1970, the summer of 1970. I did 3 or 4 shows. One of my first shows was the Bill Cosby Show. Have you heard of him? Don't know quite how to take that. But he was very nice and offered me no drinks whatsoever. And I went back and I did my 3rd semester, 4th semester, and then the summer of 71, again, I got work. And by this time, the draft was ending. A lot of people started saying, have you been out for George Lucas's new thing? I said, no, what is it? They said, something like Flash Gordon, which was an old 1930s serial. So I went out and I met, it was George, and George never spoke the entire time. Brian did the talking. It was basically, and I didn't read or anything. We didn't get any material. He just said, so tell us a little bit about yourself. And, I basically went through that spiel you heard 40 minutes ago, middle of 7 children, and blah, blah, blah. And when I left, they said, what was George Lucas like? I said, was George Lucas in there? Yeah, I saw Brian was there with his assistant. Oh, you mean the guy that didn't speak? That was George? Yeah, that was George. Okay. And I didn't think anything about it. And they said, and then my agent said, oh, you're going to get a scene in the mail. And sure enough, it arrives in the mailbox. It's like 7 pages. And it's from Star Wars. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm thinking, see, out of context, I couldn't make out what the heck they wanted. I mean, is this like a send-up? Is it like satire? Is it like Mel Brooks or something? Because I'm saying, well, what's a Wookiee? Because there were a lot of terms in there I didn't really understand, and I mean, I thought, this seems funny to me. I mean, on some level, it's hilarious, but not overtly so. It was, but the slyness was there. The banter. It was a scene in the Millennium. I'm assuming everybody knows this material. No spoilers. But it was set in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, right? And, you know, it largely exists now in the film, but that's no moon, that's a space station. That scene. But in the version I was reading, it was just Han Solo and Luke Starkiller, which was what his name was until they changed it very late. Do you know I actually filmed the scene, I'm Luke Starkiller, I'm here to rescue you, and I got a call sheet and they said they were going to shoot that scene. I said, we shot that scene last week. They said, no, we're going to reshoot it. I said, why? They said, they've changed your name. I said, really? What's wrong with Luke Starkiller? It gives him a little moxie. You know, he could use all the moxie he could get. And, you know, kind of a vapid farm boy. Let's give him a little guts here. And they said, oh, no. They don't like the word kill in your name. It's just, it tests negatively. I said, oh, those focus groups. I hate focus groups. You know, they wanted to change the name of Star Wars because 40% of women between the ages of 18 and 35 thought it had to do with the marriage of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Really? Oh, God. And there was a contest on set. If you could think of a better name than Star Wars, you would win a prize. And everybody could sign up on the bulletin board. No one came up with a better title. But again, I read, sorry?
Did you not have a suggestion, a different name for Star Wars?
I can't remember. I liked Star Wars. I thought it was really stark, you know, bing, bing, you know, it's not even the Star Wars. But I'll have to tell you, though, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself because I read this 8-page scene. And I went in and I was going to be put on videotape. George was there, Gary Kurtz, the producer, was there. And I go in and I immediately recognize Harrison from American Graffiti. And I said, oh, good. Harrison, you got to let me know. Is this like comedy? Are we doing this straightforward? And, you know, should we send it up or what? He said, you know, just... Just do the lines so we can all get out of here. See, and I'm all like, you know, bouncing around the wall, so we were already pretty much in character. And then my agent called and said, you got the Lucasfilm. I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah. What part was it again? It's Luke Starkiller. And I said, okay. And I said, who else is in it? And she said, well, I know Harrison Ford. I said, oh, yeah, I play his sidekick. Because clearly he was a leading man, and I was like this annoying, he was coolly flying the ship, and I was annoying him. And in 7 pages, I thought, well, when he drops me off, that's the last time you'll see me in the movie. I won't, you know. So I get this script, and I open the page, and it says, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Whills, Saga number 1, The Star Wars. And I went, wait a second, I don't think Harrison was playing Luke Starkiller. I think that was me. I'm not sure, I'll read it anyway. So I start reading this thing, and I'm telling you guys, you know, it didn't have the John Williams music yet, it didn't have that fantastic editing or the art direction or the performances, but so much of that magic was on that page. The roll up, and, you know, I'm reading this thing, and Darth Vader comes on, and oh my God. You know, being a big comic book fan and fantasy film fan, I just could not believe my eyes. So many times I would say, it's like, pinch me. I can't believe I'm here. I mean, you'd be in the cockpit and you think, wow, you keep it in the thought bubble. Right there is one of the most acclaimed actors of the 20th century. Multiple Oscar nominee, won an Oscar. And to my right, a guy who's over 7 feet tall, dressed in a monkey costume, who's flying the spaceship. Hello? And I'd had to do everything I could not to just burst out laughing. You know, George asked my wife and I to lunch. That's Mary Lou sitting there. She's heard these stories thousands of times, so I applaud her, the fact that she's even awake. But, and she said to me, she goes, because I said, what? Something's up, because Chelsea, my daughter, was there, and they asked that Chelsea go with George's daughters to another area to eat lunch. So we knew something was up. And Mary Lou says to me on the way over, I wonder if he's going to do another trilogy. And I laughed so hard because I said, no, he said he's not going to do any more. You know, he said that to our face. I said, I know what's happening. It's coming out on Blu-ray, or they're going to put it out in 3D. It's, you know, them wanting us to go on talk shows again and publicize it, you know. And so when he actually said, well, you know, I'm going to be selling Lucasfilm, and Kathy Kennedy's going to be running it, and he didn't mention anything about Disney, by the way, which would have been insider trading, because I would have run out and bought Disney stock had I known. But, you know, and they want to do another trilogy. And Carrie went, I'm in! I said, Carrie, you know, because I wanted to have a poker face. And plus, I was so stunned. You know, I mean, I couldn't process the information. But I thought, you know, even if Harrison doesn't do it, which I didn't think he would, it's not even like a choice. I realized it's like I've been drafted. Because if I said no, there would be, not only would people hate my guts, I'm talking about the UPFs, they would be outside my house with torches like in those old Frankenstein pictures. Except lightsabers instead of torches. But I couldn't imagine it. On the one hand, I went, yeah, it'll be fun. You know, I love George, and I can't wait to see Harrison and Harry. But when you actually thought about physically doing it, I thought, oh, gosh, you know, what are they going to do?
Thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
And for being part of a universe that has played such a huge role in a lot of people's lives and given so much joy, as you said, to a lot of people. I also want to say sorry in advance for this question.
What?
Sorry for being UPF. Will you please sign my lightsaber after this?
Not only will I, but I have very reasonable rates. I accept MasterCard and Visa.
But are you taught the choreography for the lightsaber fights, or is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's just like when I went on Broadway with a choreographer to learn a dance.
Yeah.
You know, every single step is worked out. And in this case, it was Peter Diamond was the stunt coordinator, and the fencing, worked out the moves. Bob Anderson was the Olympic fencing champion who doubled Darth Vader in Empire. Empire was the most difficult of all three films physically. It was really, really hard to do that one.
Is this what they are really like?
Yeah. In fact, this is as accurate a reproduction as I've ever seen. And, you know, one thing I learned, and I didn't know at the time, was George liked using pre-existing hardware. So if he could find like a German Luger or something and just put gizmos on it and make it look, rather than building it from scratch, he liked taking things that existed and transforming them into something that made it look like it was from a galaxy far, far away. And in this case, this is an old photographer's flash. You saw those old movies where they go, right here, Mr. DeMille, and it goes, thump, you know, and the flash powder goes off. You've seen those in movies, right? That's what this was. They would hold this up. There was a tray here, and I think they put this on. I don't know, but this basic right here.
That's all we have time for.
All right.
But I mean, to say for me, it's been a pleasure would be an understatement. I've so enjoyed talking to you.
I hope you all enjoyed it. I sure love having you. I have to tell you, I've never been invited to speak at Yale or Harvard.
Why would you want to if you've spoken here?
Well, I know they're a little down market, but that's the best we have to offer. And like I say, it's quite an honor. I know my mom and dad would be so proud of me to make it for, in a way that, you guys really don't understand. Seriously, I mean, I would have been honored just to take a tour of the campus, but to have all these people sitting here listening to me, really, thank you so much.
Well, I think everyone will join me in a warm thank you.
All right. Thank you.